Good morning and welcome to our community consultation event for the former Wisley Airfield in Ockham. My name is Andonis Pazaru and I'm the Community and Green Infrastructure Project Manager working for Taylor Wimpey, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. So, how will this session work for our third chapter of engagement? This session will last approximately 2 hours. There will be opportunities to ask questions later on. Any questions that we are unable to answer today, we will of course publish a Q&A document with answers to all of those unanswered questions by the 4th of June this year. These sessions will be recorded, as it's very much our intention to upload onto our website, which is www.wisleyairfield.com. You are today obviously attending the Saturday session. However, this is a repeat from the session we held this week on Wednesday. And of course, if you would like to ask questions throughout this presentation, then please do submit them by clicking on the icon as shown on the screen here. And of course, we will try our best to get through all of the questions today if possible. So, what will you see from this event today? We'll provide you with an overview of our latest master plan. This has obviously evolved following feedback from of course these consultation events, but also other stakeholder events that we've held, including design review panels. For the first time, we will be showing you our parameter plans, which are to be included in our planning application, which is due to be submitted later on this year. And of course, this session will provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions you might have. So the topics for today, shortly you'll hear a quick introduction from my colleagues. We'll then review the master plan and how that's evolved. We will then discuss some of the key principles of the master plan. We will then head into the Q&A session just after a short comfort break. And then, of course, we'll review the next steps. So I'll now hand you over to my colleague, Camille.
Thank you, Adonis, and good morning, everyone. My name is Camille, and I am the Planning Manager at Taylor Wimpey Strategic Land. We are one of the largest residential developers in the UK, building over 15,000 homes a year. Our mission is to create great places to live and deliver an excellent service. As part of this service, we are committed to working together with local people, community groups and local authorities to create sustainable developments. Our sites are not just about housing, but the investment into existing and new communities. In 2019, we invested over £445 million in local communities to fund improvements and build new facilities. We believe this is something to be proud of. As you may be aware, the former Wisley Airfield site was removed from the Greenbelt and Guildford Borough Council local plan in 2019. Following this, Taylor Wimpey purchased the site in March 2020 and partnered with Vivid to deliver the affordable housing. We now have a great opportunity to provide much needed new homes, community facilities and infrastructure for the Guildford area. We don't just build homes, but we also add social, economic and environmental value to the wider communities that we operate within. Joining me on the former Wisley Airfield project are an experienced and dedicated team, including Adonis Pazaru, the Community and Green Infrastructure Project Manager, who we heard from earlier, Lee Davis, Strategics Technical Director, Jonathan Pillow, Project Director, and James Newton, Planning Manager. We have put together a dedicated consultant team whose ethos reflects that of Taylor Wimpey's. Our project team has many years of experience in creating sustainable developments that benefit the wider community. The team have been working together in collaboration, and today you will be hearing from GSA Studios on master planning, DLA on landscaping, EPR on ecology and biodiversity, Greengage on sustainability, MPCS on community trust, and WSP on transport and connectivity. This is our master plan boundary, which many of you will be familiar with. It reflects the boundary of Policy A35 and includes additional land owned by Taylor Wimpey to the north. The land in the blue and pink is represented by CBRE and Hallam respectively. We have a landowner working group with both parties to ensure the master plan is developed as a cohesive whole. Our outline planning application will be submitted for land owned by Taylor Wimpey only. Setting the planning policy baseline for us is the adopted local plan, as well as the Lovelace Neighbourhood Plan and supporting supplementary planning guidance, which includes the Strategic Development Framework (SPD). As set out in our first and second public consultations, the adopted local plan sets the principles of development on this site through Policy A35, which seeks to deliver approximately 2,000 homes, of which 40% will be affordable, and a suite of supporting non-residential uses, mostly within the local centre. As many of you are aware, we are working with Vivid to deliver the affordable housing, and this is something we are really proud of. We will also be delivering a large amount of open green space, including a country park, which we will hear more on later. But for now, I will hand back to Adonis, who will go through the consultation timeline with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. As I mentioned before, we are now heading into our chapter 3 of community consultation. The start of this chapter is obviously these public community consultation events that we're holding. In the next week, we will be meeting Design Southeast again and presenting our proposals to the design review panel to obviously gather their feedback. We also have further stakeholder group meetings with various parish councils and other borough-wide stakeholders before we then submit our planning application in the second or third quarter of this year. So I'll now take this opportunity to hand you over to Graham Kime, who will run through the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Adonis. My name's Graham Kime. I'm a director at Gardner Stewart Architects, and we're working with Taylor Wimpey as the master planners for this new settlement. Before we look at the latest master plan images, I thought I'd very quickly remind you about what we've previously discussed in these sessions. So at the first event in July last year, we talked about a number of strategic concepts relating to this new neighbourhood, including how we might break it down into 3 different neighbourhoods that reflects the local settlement pattern and allows it to nestle into the context of the Surrey Hills, rather than a single linear form. And we discussed the types of facilities that we could be providing on the site and asked you where you thought the best locations for these facilities would be. And now how we could start to create a walkable neighbourhood where everyone, including existing residents, will be able to be close to a range of facilities like shops and schools. This diagram is the outcome of that exercise, showing 5, 10 and 15-minute walks from the various facilities. And then in November, we discussed our emerging ideas and sketches, and this diagram in particular, what we call the ideas map, started to explore those ideas, pull them together into a more coherent framework. One of those key ideas was about connections, so connecting people and facilities within the site, which included the idea of a sustainable transport corridor through the centre of the village. Also connecting to existing facilities in the surrounding area using new and improved bus and cycle connections, which Colin will talk to you about later. And also, of course, enabling existing residents to be part of this new community. We also showed you some initial sketches to start to give an impression about the character of the village. So today we'll be putting a bit more meat on the bones. We'll be showing you how we've taken on board your comments and feedback in order to develop our ideas into a master plan. And we'll show you some more developed images and visualizations of the type of place that we want to create. First of all, we'd like to take you on a quick tour of our proposed new village. So I hope that's given you a flavour of our proposals. I'm sorry it was a bit jerky. The video will be available on the website, and we will be able to talk to you about those issues during the rest of this presentation. So this is the current illustrative master plan, with the A3 shown in the northwest, and Ockham Lane in the southeast, just to orientate you. And this is an illustrative idea about how the village could be laid out. The village is broken down into 3 neighbourhoods, enveloped by a country park. The neighbourhoods are separated by green swathes that we're calling the greenways, and which will be active multifunctional flat spaces containing play areas, growing spaces and allotments, as well as lakes and ponds, all in a biodiverse landscape. And Mike, our landscape architect, will be telling you all about that later. As Camille said at the beginning, the allocated site is not all owned by Taylor Wimpey, and we're working closely with the other landowners on a cohesive master plan. But the outline planning application that we'll be submitting soon will be just for the land owned by Taylor Wimpey, which is highlighted here. So this next slide shows how the village is set in a network of green space. The country park, linked by the greenways between the neighbourhoods, create numerous circular walking routes. The village greens form the community focus of each neighbourhood, and the north-south green links then will pass through each of the residential areas and the village greens, making it a very permeable place. And this network of public open space has been built around the existing public rights of way and bridleways, which knit the village together and reach out into the wider community. Next slide, please, Thomas. And connect the surrounding villages and hamlets, and provide these very, very strong north-south connections. And the east-west connections are then reinforced by the sustainable movement corridor, which connects the neighbourhoods together. This is a wide and attractive green corridor that combines pedestrian, cycle, buses and car travel, but does so in a way that encourages non-car modes of travel. And this demonstrates our priority to design for people rather than just for cars. Pedestrians and cyclists will have priority at the junctions. There are places to stop and pause with seating, doorstep play spaces, and the space frequently opens up into village greens and greenways to provide constant variation and interest. Now, we're not just proposing housing, we're looking to create a sustainable community containing a broad mix of uses. We want our community to have as much as possible within walking distance for both new and existing residents, of shops, schools, employment, sport and recreation, and opportunities for the community to come together. So the neighbourhood centre is in the middle of the village, with shops and cafes, workspace and community facilities that are focused at the connection with Hatch Lane around a new market square. And that provides the opportunities for a local market, but also an event space for community functions. We'll also, though, locate local shops in the 2 outer neighbourhoods so that every home is within 5 minutes walk of a shop. We've included a site for an all-through school, from nursery through to secondary education that will be offered to the local education authority. We will be including specialist housing for older people close to the neighbourhood centre. Sports fields will offer a range of sports, including a full-sized all-weather pitch and more informal activities, including for teenagers. Then close to the A3, there will be additional employment opportunities in addition to those in the neighbourhood centre. And to provide heating and hot water for the new homes and facilities, we'll be building a new green energy centre that will enable them to be fossil fuel-free buildings. And in the sports pavilion, of course, and the visitor centre, they also provide community uses in addition to those in the neighbourhood centre. And all these land uses are then captured in the parameter plans. This first parameter plan is the land use parameter, and these are a series of drawings that define what we will be applying permission for. They show the principles for the development and set the limits of this new village. If these are approved, then later more detailed applications will be judged against these parameters in addition to planning policy. So this parameter shows, as I say, the land uses that we're applying for. The next parameter plan shows the green infrastructure. So the country park or the SANG, the greenways, the village greens and the sports fields, these are all defined as part of the application. Similarly, we just define the extent of the building envelope in the building heights parameter plan. This sets out the maximum storey heights, the maximum eaves heights, and gives an allowance for a pitched roof. This village will be mainly 2 and 3 story homes throughout, but we want to have the flexibility to go to 4 stories occasionally to create focal buildings in certain locations. So we set out zones in this plan where we show that this can happen, whilst at the same time limiting how much it can happen. The final parameter plan is access and movement. This shows where all the new accesses will be created into the site, how we'll be retaining the public rights of way, and the location of the sustainable transport corridor. So these are some of the guiding principles. Sorry, next slide, Antonis. These are some of the guiding principles that help us to ensure that we are creating a truly sustainable community. And we'd like to demonstrate to you how these apply to our proposals. So the first of these, and the one that encompasses perhaps all of the proposals, is sustainability. So I'm going to hand over to Rob, who will take us through the ideas that we have for the site.
Thanks, Graham. Good morning all. My name's Rob Miller. I'm an associate at the sustainability consultancy Greengage Environmental and have been supporting Taylor Wimpey in developing the overarching sustainability approach. As an introduction to the key principles, sustainability has been a central theme from the outset at Wisley. And as summarised here, the strategy aims to deliver compliance with planning policy and guidance as part of the application, but also aims to deliver to achieve exemplary performance across a range of sectors, as detailed here, such as net zero carbon, climate resilience and sustainable transport that we'll talk about in more detail. So in order to deliver sustainable development of Wisley, we've created 7 key headlines as detailed here, covering all 3 pillars of sustainability: environmental, social and economic. And within each of these topics, we've addressed the key desired outcomes, the specific interventions to meet those, and then some specific project targets to ensure that we have successful delivery. The full detail of these is included in the sustainability strategy, which will accompany the application. Sustainability has been a central theme for Taylor Wimpey, which aligns with the ambitions to deliver long-term, high-quality development, and has also been recognised as a critical factor in accordance with the expectations of the local authority and development stakeholders. The key aim of this overarching strategy is to demonstrate how each of the principles complement one another. So, for example, the green infrastructure strategy delivering climate resilience at the same time, and how sustainable transport is helping deliver health and wellbeing on site. In terms of engagement on this approach, this was undertaken from the outset, with the key principles being agreed with Guildford Borough Council at the start of the pre-application process, and has been structured following feedback from the design review panel sessions, and then has also taken on feedback from as part of the consultation and community liaison group events. So I'll provide an overview here of the approach to sustainability for the master plan, as well as the key ambitions, and the detail of these responses and the interventions will be discussed in more detail by my colleagues throughout this presentation. So I'll just run briefly through some of the key principles that form the basis of the sustainability approach. So from an environmental perspective, we'll be delivering, as Graham mentioned, a carbon-friendly development with a fossil fuel-free heat network. It's incorporating renewables as well as considering the embodied carbon associated with the construction of the development. All of the demolition and excavation waste is going to be retained on site through a carefully balanced cut and fill strategy. And during operation, there'll be 0 potable water use for irrigation. We'll deliver climate resilience through a really comprehensive green and blue infrastructure network. And this will also support significant biodiversity enhancement. And finally, the development will support a modal shift in transport decisions towards more sustainable forms, which will be discussed in more detail by Colin shortly. Regarding social impacts, delivering the master plan that enhances health and wellbeing has been a real priority. This is both in terms of inclusive and accessible outdoor spaces, as Mike and Graham will expand upon, but also in terms of ensuring the homes are designed with consideration of factors such as daylight, air quality, acoustics and thermal comfort. In addition, the homes have been designed to allow for flexibility and future adaptability to support potential increased home working. And the central community hub will offer a range of community facilities for both residents and surrounding communities. And finally, regarding economic benefits, so the construction of the master plan offers a major opportunity to benefit the local economy through really comprehensive employment training and skills strategy. And Taylor Wimpey have a wealth of experience in delivering successful programs to support this. In operation, the community trust, which Mark will expand on in more detail, will bring together a range of community stakeholders with volunteering and job opportunities associated with issues such as site management. So sort of finally, in accordance with the overall structure of this presentation, I'd like to finally respond directly to the key themes highlighted in the sustainability principle of the Making Sustainable Places in Guildford guidance, and at the same time demonstrate how we try to innovate and be more creative in our development response. So as stated, planning policy has been our baseline, but we've aimed to go beyond this across all of the sectors. In terms of going beyond carbon friendly, we're delivering compliance with future home standards and a zero fossil fuels energy strategy. Regarding new public transport connections, there'll be new bus services running through the site with all homes within 200 metres of a bus stop. We'll also be delivering significant improvements in accessibility to local public transport nodes. The master plan will not only be green, but will deliver environmental net gain through an ecosystem services approach. So this includes not only a biodiversity net gain of 20%, but also accounts for the benefits of connecting people with nature and responding to the climate emergency. The master plan is encouraging sustainable modes of transport as required, but the real ambition is to achieve a modal shift in transport use. This is through considered infrastructure to prioritise walking and cycling, but supported with features such as the integrated mobility hub. And finally, sustainability is being integrated from the first phase. So this includes connection of the homes to the site-wide heat network, availability of the SANG and the associated features, and provision of, for example, high-speed digital infrastructure. So hopefully that's given a good overview of the sustainability approach. And I'll now hand back over to Graham to discuss the strategy and to look at sense of place.
Thank you, Rob. So sustainability is a key part of our proposal. And the next principle is about creating a sense of place. So what will this new village feel like? What will make it special? And how will it relate to this particular place? We want to give this new village a distinct and recognisable identity. So we have designed a master plan where the landscape and the built form have been considered together to create a strong framework that provides a unique experience and has a clear sense of its own identity. And that sense of identity helps us to engender a sense of community. This is where I live, this is where I belong, these are my neighbours. At the same time, we're looking at how we draw inspiration from the surrounding context and the local vernacular. So the palettes of materials, such as the distinctive red brick and tile hanging, architectural forms such as low eaves, cat-slide roofs, dormer windows, architectural details such as brick coursing, terracotta wall tiles. These can be all represented in a contemporary way that will take cues from our studies of the local villages and that bring a sense of familiarity, that the buildings are part of a wider tradition that is of this locality. Another aspect that makes this place special are the fantastic views across the Surrey Hills, and we've sought to capture those views and integrate them into the place, to use them to connect people with the wider context and to constantly remind people where they are. So we've developed this master plan. As we've developed this master plan, we've considered how we can enrich the experience of this village by forming places. Sorry, next slide, please, Antonis. By forming places, enclosing streets and squares, framing views of the landscape, or terminating a view with a special building. And these are the tools that we have for creating townscape and creating a sense of place. So on this next plan, considerations are highlighted on this urban design framework, next slide, which defines to the designer of each place, each phase of the village, what considerations and principles they will need to adopt. So our approach is to create a necklace of pearls along that central corridor, a series of special places and townscape treats every now and again that provide interest and variety in the streetscape. So for instance, these are the special events. The main events are through the sustainable transport corridor, the village greens and the market square, with green links or strategic views that are associated. In between these are intermediate events that might just be marked by a bench or a piece of doorstep play or a group of trees. The greenways then form a break between the neighbourhoods, but they also help to define the neighbourhoods and give them shape and an identity in their own right. Moving from one neighbourhood to the other is marked by a gateway, perhaps a pair of buildings that signal that you're leaving one neighbourhood and entering another. And then within the housing areas are incidental spaces and more subtle view corridors and focal buildings. So I'm going to show you some visualizations that demonstrate some of our place creation. You'll have seen some of these briefly in the earlier show reels. So the first one is our Western Gateway. And in this view, you can see this is from the new roundabout. And as you can see, we're using both the buildings and the landscape together to create a gateway. And this is an important location that needs to say that you've arrived, that you've come home. There are two lakes at the roundabout and this wonderful rolling landscape that is actually acting as the noise barrier. And as you look up the hill, the landscape parts and these two sentinel buildings form a gateway into the village. And between the buildings, you can just start to see one of the buildings on the village green in the distance that holds your view. And as you come up the hill, the first village green begins to emerge. As you rise over the crest, you're presented with a framed view across the Surrey Hills. You got the next slide? And this view is something that we're looking to create wherever possible. We want to introduce interest and surprise into the journey so that when you rise over the crest of a hill, or you look down a street, or you emerge into the broad open space and turn your head, you'll see a view or a vista of the distant hills. And that's not something you get anywhere. That's what makes this place special and gives it that sense of place. And we've located a village green in each neighbourhood as a focal space. Each green has a different character that differentiates each of the neighbourhoods. This green has a view and a children's play area within it. And this type of semi-enclosed village green that is open to the wider countryside is a common feature in this area. And in the foreground, you can see the segregated cycle path that forms part of the sustainable transport corridor that we're showing in this next slide. And this corridor is a green and attractive and safe route that gives priority to the pedestrians and cyclists. And we hope will provide that incentive to walk or cycle to the shops rather than, or the school, I guess, or rather than jump in the car. But this in itself is also a piece of placemaking. It's more than just a road. It offers an opportunity for social interaction. With variation in width of the road, allows you to open up incidental spaces where you can stop and sit. An incorporation of these wide rain gardens that deliver sustainable drainage rather than narrow grass verges. There will be lay-bys for electric car clubs, and bus stops will occur every 200 yards. And we're looking to create a soft, gentle architecture with varied roof lines that draws on the local variety you see in places like Ripley, using local materials and local forms. And as I said, each village green will have a different character to provide that sense of identity. In the central village, which is a higher density with more apartments and townhouses, we're suggesting that the homes will be more contemporary in character while still referencing local forms and materials. This green contains a sunken informal play space and a village pond, which again contributes to the sustainable drainage and biodiversity, as well as creating an attractive focal point. And in the distance, you can see here we've suggested some small four-storey apartment buildings that marks that key corner and provides a subtle variation in the townscape. The eastern neighbourhood is the lowest density of the three neighbourhoods. It's more rural in character, with perhaps more traditional buildings. So the green links and streets radiate out from the space towards the country park and the surrounding lanes. And here we're looking to create more formal community gardens incorporating sensory planting and communal growing spaces enclosed with clip hedges. It's quite a different type of open space to the rest of the village. And this next slide shows a view around the market square in the neighbourhood centre. This is the focal space for the whole community, and we'll be providing a range of uses that will keep the space viable and active. There'll be a small food store together with 7 or 8 smaller shops and cafes. There'll also be a village hall, a medical facility, workspace above the shops. We'll have the schools and the nursery, and also the mobility hub that is a focus for the sustainable transport choices that Colin will discuss further. And this will be a place where people from all the neighbourhoods and from the existing community will come together. Finally, I just wanted to talk briefly about the design code framework, because whilst we're applying permission in outline, we're not asking for approval for the design of the individual buildings. That will come later and will be subject to further consultation. But what we do want to define at this stage is what sort of place this will be. And the principles that I've been discussing will be fixed in the outline planning permission, initially by a document called the Design Code Framework and later by individual design codes. And these types of drawings will provide the instructions for future designers to indicate that this is the location for an important landmark building or a gateway. and it will set out the principles of the key spaces, the street frontages, next slide please, the key views, widths and characters of the different streets, and the palette of materials. And further detailed applications will then need to demonstrate how they've complied with these requirements. So that demonstrates our approach to creating a sense of place. And the next principle regards the sense of community. Strong sense of community is associated with improved well-being. But we cannot create a sense of community. But there is a lot we can do to foster and capitalise on the community spirit, to encourage engagement in social activities, and to ensure that we're creating places, spaces and buildings where people can come together. We're currently working with community and culture professionals to look at opportunities for engagement in culture and community programmes in the early years in order to promote an ongoing community spirit. In a moment, Mark will discuss the role of the Community Trust in engendering that sense of community over the coming years. First, a couple more of these images. The neighbourhood centre, again, for example, this will be a key community hub bringing people together. So a cluster of services and communities, uses such as shops and cafes, employment, education, and dedicated community buildings, as well as the market square. And this next slide shows a possible arrangement of the neighbourhood centre with the shops and the workspace arranged around the market square. And in the north, a community quarter, including the community centre with a community hall, schools from nursery through to secondary education, a medical facility, and all of these are arranged around a community garden and a children's play space. And the building in pink is specialist accommodation for older people, and this provides the opportunity for an intergenerational community around the neighbourhood centre. And of course, it's not just buildings, but also the open spaces, from the siting of a bench to formal sports pitches, the village greens and the village park, and walking the dog around the country park. All of these bring our new village a huge variety of spaces and a strong basis for community action, community interaction. So I'll now hand over to Mark to talk about the long-term stewardship.
Thank you very much, Graham, and good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Patchett, a specialist in stewardship, legacy and charitable trusts within new housing developments. The long-term ownership and management of all the community land and facilities is a fundamental part of Taylor Wimpey's planning application and will be a key tool to enable the delivery of its strategy for environmental, social and economic sustainability outlined by Rob. A charitable trust will be created before first occupation, which will own and manage the SANG, all of the community buildings and public open spaces that you saw in the video, and will initiate and deliver a comprehensive community development programme, getting to know the residents, putting on events and activities, helping to manage waste and recycling, and promoting and enabling the sustainable transport strategy. The Trust will employ staff and manage its resources. It will have a governance structure of trustees made up of residents, parish council, and other relevant stakeholders, reporting back to the annual general meeting. Board subcommittees will be created to enable residents and partners to contribute to the thinking, planning, and delivery of the stewardship strategy. And it will all be resourced through a long-term sustainable and viable financial model designed to ensure financial self-sufficiency with income from an annual charge on residents of Wisley Airfield, the hiring of community facilities, and also income from endowed assets. A culture of participation in the Trust, its activities and its decision-making processes will be enabled from the beginning through its community development approach. A key feature will be an emphasis on community integration, both within the new settlement and between the new and existing communities. This will be physically, as described by my design colleagues, but also organisationally, functionally and socially, initiated by the Community Trust. The Trust will be an enabling organisation, empowering and supporting residents to take initiative, to know their neighbours, start clubs and activities, and to help build that sense of community. The facilities and activities at Wisley Airfield will complement those in neighbouring parishes. We aspire to see full integration where new residents use shops, facilities, places of worship in the surrounding areas, and vice versa. This will require working with all stakeholders, the parish councils, existing and new local residents, Ockham Parish Church, sports and community groups, Vivid, and of course the local authority. I'll now hand over to Colin to discuss the connectivity principle.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colin Mackay. I'm a technical director at WSP, and I'm looking after the sustainable and highway transport connections for this development. The connectivity principles we're applying to the master plan are set out here. We're embracing the principle of creating walkable neighbourhoods that can service day-to-day needs, so we minimise the need to travel off-site. To achieve this, we are providing segregated routes that will be attractive, accessible and safe for the whole community. Bus stops will be within 200 metres. That's around a 2 to 3 minute walk of each dwelling, so they'll be easy to get to, and we'll have shelters and information on bus timetables. We're designing for people, not cars, making the neighbourhoods accessible for everyone and designing out car dependency. Cycle routes suitable for average cyclists will be delivered to a range of key local destinations and communities, and I'll talk more about them later on. The Sustainable Movement Corridor forms a spine through the community, connecting its functional areas together in a way that gives priority to sustainable transport, and which sets the tone for the whole development. With attractive and easily navigated routes, it also serves to encourage community interaction and neighbourliness. Whilst it provides for movement by the car, cyclists and pedestrians will be segregated from cars and generally have priority at junctions, and traffic speeds will be low at 20 miles per hour or less. We're even thinking now about how to encourage cycling by making it easy to choose to cycle, by placing cycle stores right at the front door or attached to the garage in a way you don't have to clamber through the whole contents of the garage to find it. In general, we plan to make the cycle more accessible than the car. All the Sang areas will allow and encourage walking and cycling, and along the southern Sang edge, this will be a beautiful natural environment built within the rolling topography, and yet with natural surveillance from the new homes. The habitat and diversity opportunities will be explored later in this presentation by Jodie, our ecologist. Now, this plan sets out how the site will be at the centre of a network of connectivity by modes other than the car. It shows the sustainable transport corridor, linking the existing network of public rights-of-way, all of which are to be retained. And beyond that, the network of cycling and bus route infrastructure reaching out into the surrounding communities. And the yellow routes that I hope you can see show our key cycle routes for the average cyclist, broadly heading north, south, east and west. The red and purple lines show the bus service network serving stations and larger urban areas. Taylor Wimpey are committed to providing sustainable travel options to the surrounding communities, and existing residents in these communities will also benefit from this investment. It will also mean the proposed development complies with policy requirements on sustainable transport in the Guildford Borough Council adopted local plan. I talk more about cycling and buses in the next few slides. Hopefully the bus routes are clearer on this slide. The blue line shows the service to the stations at Effingham Junction and Horsley, which is in East Horsley. This will run all day into the evening, up to around midnight, and provide a 15-minute service during the busiest times of the day. It will also use electric vehicles. The purple lines show the Guildford service serving Guildford, Send and Woking. That builds on the existing 462-463 service, and it increases its frequency to every 30 minutes. The yellow line, shown in the right-hand top corner of the slide, shows a service to Cobham. That service will be provided either as a timetabled route or as a more demand-responsive service, and the decision on this has yet to be finalised. But all the services will be provided early in the development to encourage their use by the new residents on site. Connectivity by cycling starts on site, firstly by making it easier to access your bike at the front door, and then with the network of cycle routes designed to the latest design standards. These will be segregated along the Sustainable Movement Corridor, shown in orange through the middle of the site, and traffic-free, shown in purple and in green. The internal routes link to our proposed off-site network of routes for the average cyclist that I explain next. So we have focused on destinations for our new cycle routes in an objective and analytical way to serve as many journey purposes as possible. The table here sets out the number of amenities in the local communities. We have then ranked each destination to prioritise where we focus our resources. So Cobham, the Horseleys, Byfleet and Ripley ranked highest by quite some margin. Although Effingham Junction has a station, other destinations with a station on the same line, such as Horsley, cater for more journey purposes and are therefore more of a priority. Effingham Junction will, in any event, be served by a 15-minute bus service from the site to cater for commuters, and confident cyclists will still be able to cycle there. But this map shows the routes we're proposing and discussing with Surrey County Council. It shows how well our routes mesh in with the rest of the existing and planned future cycle routes, shown in the dark blue colour and the dotted lines. The red lines show routes to stations for confident cyclists, and these will benefit from lower 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. The green lines show routes to other destinations using quiet lanes, and more on these in a second. We're using segregated and mixed traffic cycle facilities according to the guidance in the latest design standard. You can see on this map there is a network of quiet lanes proposed. These are shown in the yellow colour. These are a nationally recognised approach and provide a safer environment for non-motorised users. So that's for cyclists, pedestrians and equestrians. Typically, they carry less than 1,000 motor vehicles per day, so cyclists and pedestrians can mix easily with traffic. We're proposing reducing the speed limits to 30 or even 20 miles per hour in some locations. The measure also protects the rural character of these lanes. And we're proposing to apply this designation to Ockham Lane and Plough Lane from Ockham Road North through to Downside Bridge Road, to Longreach and to Wisley Lane. This is already an area popular with cyclists, as you will all know, so any safety improvements will also benefit the wider community of cyclists. I'm now going to show you a few worked up examples of the sorts of measures we mean at some key locations. We've shown these to key stakeholders at recent consultation events on the cycle routes. So here I will just give you a flavour of our designs at some specific locations. Here at Almsheath and Ockham Road North, we're applying gateway treatments north and south of the junctions to reduce speeds of traffic so that cyclists can mix with that traffic more safely. A right turn lane is provided for northbound cyclists, similar to the one shown on the inset. At the southern end of Longreach, we propose again treating the main road with gateway treatments to reinforce the existing 30-mile-an-hour limit and improving the public realm within the highway boundary to enhance the experience for cyclists. The two examples coming next are on Portsmouth Road, where we can introduce segregation of cyclists from traffic and improve the continuity of the route from Ockham interchange through to Ripley. At the bridge that you'll all be familiar with, we're proposing to continue the cycle lanes over the bridge such that drivers have to accommodate and merge with cyclists safely. The gateway treatment on the approach to Ripley that you'll see on the right-hand side will reduce vehicle speeds to accommodate this behaviour. But either side of it, there would be segregated cycle routes in both directions on each side of the road. Now, the highway is wide enough further east to allow an extension of the cycle facilities provided at Ockham interchange by the Highways England DCO scheme. I'll now hand back to Graham, who's going to tell you more about innovation on the site.
Thank you, Colin. Yes, the next principle is about innovation. This area has a rich history of innovation, from Ada Lovelace, who you'll probably know was involved in the design of the first computer, to Barnes Wallis and his geodesic aircraft designs. We'd like to draw upon that innovative spirit in so much that it helps us to achieve our core principles. One innovation is the use of a district energy centre powered by air source heat pumps that extract heat from the air in order to provide heating and hot water to all the homes. And this will mean that the buildings at Wisley will be fossil fuel free. We're also looking at how we can employ flexible buildings and spaces that can adapt to changing needs. And that includes up to 2,500 square metres of flexible workspace that we're calling an innovation hub. And that will have hireable office space, hireable desks, and support people who choose to work from home or close to home. We're also looking at flexible parking spaces that can function as an extension of your garden or convert to a garden room or home office if you choose not to own multiple cars. Other innovations include the systems of long-term stewardship that Mark has discussed by the creation of a charitable trust. And Jodie will also talk about our approach to increasing biodiversity and some of the more collaborative and innovative approaches we have to habitat creation. But at first I'll pass back to Colin again to discuss some of the transport innovations.
Thanks again, Graham. We are in a time of great change as we adjust to the post-COVID-19 world. And combined with the climate emergency, it's a pivotal opportunity to change travel attitudes and behaviours. Government policy towards cycling and bus transport is leading in these changes, with significant investment aimed at levelling up non-car transport to the levels we see in London. And we want to capitalise on this and change behaviours. As an example, e-bikes will be a key component as they open up cycling to a wider range of people and make it easier and quicker to make a journey by bike. We see cycling and walking as the default modes of choice for travel within the village. Our proposed mobility hub in the village centre will be a key part of that, offering services to support cycling and provide a focal point for awareness events and promotional activities. There will also be smaller satellite hubs in the eastern and western villages, so travel to the village centre will not always be necessary. Car club membership will also be available using electric vehicles based at the mobility hubs, as well as last mile delivery services to parcel lockers. Our innovative and flexible approach to transport will make the most of this golden opportunity for change. I'm now going to hand over to Mike Davis, who's going to take you through the green framework for the site.
Many thanks, Colin, and good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Davis. I'm a principal of Davis Landscape Architects, and I'm here to tell you about our plans for the landscape and open spaces, which will make this an exceptional new place to live. So the green infrastructure, or GI, will provide a series of high-quality, multifunctional open spaces that delivers a series of benefits that will bring communities together, provide health and well-being, and reinforce placemaking. Our landscape vision, which has had a strong influence on the master plan, has been led by the following principles: creating an easy and accessible place, access to high quality open spaces, and offering a real broad range of experiences in different landscape character areas, providing a range of opportunities for recreation, places for social interaction, and play for all ages and abilities, creating a distinctive landscape setting to enhance local character and placemaking, enhancing and improving the existing landscape and habitat features, and significantly improving connectivity to the wider landscape. We want to ensure that all residents are within 250 metres of naturalised open space, and ensure that species and features are robust against the effects of climate change and pests and diseases. We also want to integrate a blue infrastructure strategy throughout the whole development to prevent surface water flood and provide a range of wetland habitats and other benefits. Next slide, please. The Landscape Master Plan has continued to evolve through numerous discussions and feedback from key stakeholders, as well as our previous community consultations. Over 60% of the site is open space, mostly contained within a naturalised parkland setting, interlinked by a series of north-south corridors that provide the backbone for more formal activities within the development areas and the greenways. The key types of open space can be summarised as a country park, which is also known as a SANG, and that will extend to 50 hectares, sports pitches and other recreations, and you can see these to the northwest and around the school, children's play areas, and opportunities for food production. And I'll talk about these in more detail a little later on. The country park itself will provide a large-scale informal naturalised open space that is rich in biodiversity as well as visual delight. Its design in detail is currently being consulted with Natural England, Surrey Wildlife Trust, and we've also had discussions with the RSPB. The country park will include a range of habitats and landscapes, including wet woodland, the stream of Stratford Brook, large ponds, tree belts, scrub, orchards, and huge areas of species-rich meadows. Extensive tree planting will play a key role in the natural and urban environment, and will not only be chosen for their appearance and placemaking abilities, but also their biodiversity value, resilience against the effects of climate change, pests and diseases, and innovatively, their effectiveness at carbon capture over their lifetime. The country parks will be connected by a series of different length circular routes, linking to each of the neighbourhoods and wider routes outside the site as well. These routes will be enhanced by sculpture, picnic areas, information boards, and places to enjoy long views to the Surrey Hills to the south, enriching the experience. The village entrance. The arrival from the new Wisley Lane diversion has been designed to provide an attractive threshold to the village and form part of the narrative to RHS Wisley. The entrance is demarked by two ponds and gentle earth mounding within a naturalised setting as shown on the fly-through earlier. A cafe, car park and toilets will be located at the western entrance to the country park, a short distance from the entrance roundabout, and will be well signposted with adequate parking. This will include a formal dog training area, which we have found to be very popular on other country parks, as well as information on sang circular walks and other points of interest, such as our boardwalk in the wet woodland to the southeast. We're also exploring the option to allocate some of the country park spaces near the sports facility to the north to allow people the choice to access the Sound and New Harbour Walk bordering the Wisley Lane diversion. The Wisley Lane diversion, roundabout and Harbour Walk will form part of the narrative and arrival experience to RHS Wisley, taking the opportunity to showcase tree species in particular. The Harbour Walk on the western boundary will form part of a longer horticultural trail and will form an attractive route with a different character to the country park, as well as acting as an educational resource and contextual links to the RHS gardens. The largely wooded and treed landscape to the west will also help improve air quality along the A3 transport corridor. Wet woodland and boardwalk in the southwest corner will form an attractive walk through an existing mature wet woodland along the Stratford Brook. To the north of the central neighbourhood lies the school, and this will provide opportunities for all ages to get involved with conservation and being close to nature, and will also have access to school allotments nearby. Green links. As Graham showed earlier, the principal north-south corridors, as shown on this diagram, provide separation between villages, but also have an important function in connecting the north and south country parks and links to other types of open space designed as multifunctional open areas, including wildlife corridors and stepping stones. Next slide, please, Angelis. The majority of the formal sport will be located within the sports complex in the former hangar area to the northwest, and will be complemented by additional community pitches within the schools. The network of footpaths and cycle routes also means that the access to these facilities can mostly be achieved via vehicle-free routes. The sports pitches will consist of a mix of grass and all-weather pitches to provide all year-round use and allow for a range of other sports to be accommodated. Other non-pitch sports will be provided, and these are more suited to the green corridors between each neighbourhood and designed to allow for flexibility and a wider range of activities such as a rounders and shoot ball, that sort of thing. The country park and corridors provide park run circuits of varying length and will be interlinked with each neighbourhood and cross through different types of formal and informal landscapes. This particular slide shows the ability for a 10 kilometre, 6.6 kilometre and a 5 kilometre circuit. And we can also include an outdoor trim trail on one of these routes. Parks, recreation and play. An important element of any community is the ability to engage through play and social interaction. Our village greens and other green corridors will play an important role in providing a range of formal and informal spaces that create safe and attractive vehicle-free space for residents. They will be comparable in size to the village greens at Shamley Green and Brockham and provide opportunities for large event spaces as well as a mix of managed and naturalised landscapes. Smaller pocket parks form part of the central hubs of each neighbourhood and lie at intersections of pedestrian routes, including those to the wider country park. These are more intimate spaces within the development areas and are generally bounded and overlooked by houses. Typically, these will be large enough to accommodate informal children's play, social gathering space, areas with shade, seating areas, suds drainage, and perhaps some smaller food growing areas. The equipped play areas are primarily located within these settings, and they will be designed to engage children's imagination and develop their cognitive skills, as well as having fun, through a range of formal and informal play experiences. These will cater for children up to 12, shown in pink here, and older children shown in purple, to explore and play informal games. Additional provision for teenagers, shown in green, will include a range of active play provision, such as a pump track and a skateboard park, which was actually suggested in one of our community liaison groups. These spaces will be designed to allow natural surveillance and provide a secure seating area away from the neighbouring properties. Next slide. Food production. The ability to provide or access locally grown produce has many well-being benefits while helping to bring communities together. We intend to go beyond our allotment policy requirements and provide opportunities for localised smaller scale facilities such as urban beekeeping, vertical vegetable walls and smaller community gardens. Alongside the benefits to wellbeing and community pride, these areas will also bring biodiversity into the heart of the settlement. The Community Trust will have a key role in the promotion of food production and awareness. This will be through organisation of events, management of community projects such as the community garden and local farmers market, and ensuring the distribution at harvest times to avoid waste and the education of local residents in the available opportunities. In addition, the country park will provide opportunities for informal food gathering, such as a foraging trail and orchards that will be open to all. Landscape spaces will be designed to be multifunctional and flexible to accommodate and adapt to the needs of the community and meeting the challenges of climate change. This slide, the Central Village Park, illustrates how the design of each open space is being carefully considered to provide a holistic approach to landscape biodiversity and community engagement and interaction. This area, for instance, includes spaces for social interaction and opportunities to meet in an attractive, safe and comfortable car-free environment in Village Square and the Greens. Co-location of facilities at important nodes, such as play areas next to shops and schools, and our care facility. Seating areas at the shops and health centre are located on easily accessible pedestrian routes. Permeability and connectivity to encourage cycling and walking along predominantly traffic-free routes within an open and natural surveillance area and marked clearly with signposts and other features. Creation of an attractive, sustainable landscape framework that reinforces a sense of place and belonging through tree planting and careful design of these open spaces. Vistas and views, incorporating current views towards the South Downs and creating potential for new vistas and new views within the development. Bringing nature into the settlement, providing habitat corridors and links through the whole site, and use of landscape features to create clearly defined way marking and nodes at junctions of footpaths and cycle routes. Next slide, please, Antonis. Our aim is to embrace and celebrate water in a positive way and to recognise its value as a precious resource. The site topography creates opportunities for an integrated blue infrastructure strategy across the whole site, creating points of interest and wetland habitats in the country parks, as well as the urban environment. This diagram shows how subs can reduce flood risk, positively enhance its setting, provide opportunities for play, improve biodiversity and air quality, as well as opportunities to recycle water, both within the building site and open spaces. Features such as rain gardens and roadside swales within the development areas will create these long linear corridors, giving way to broader linear swales and ponds within the country park, providing a range of different habitats and opportunities for wildlife, children's play, even areas for dogs to swim and fetch sticks. Now I'm now going to hand you over to Jodie, who will talk more about the ecology of the proposals.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Jodie Southgate. I'm a senior consultant ecologist at EPR, Ecological Planning and Research, and we're an ecological consultancy. So for those of you who haven't seen me before on previous community consultation events, my job and my colleagues' job is to ensure that the ecology and wildlife is taken into account in all aspects of the project and protected as well as part of the scheme. Over the past 5 or 6 years, we've carried out a wide range of ecological surveys, so we know what's there, we know how different species use the habitats around the site, and we've been working really closely with the design team that you've heard from today on all the different plans and designs that we've been showing you. So this slide is just to illustrate really that, as I'm sure most of you know, the vast majority of the site is currently used as intensive agriculture, and this is generally not very wildlife friendly. So we really have a huge opportunity to reverse that on a scale that you don't often see with new developments, really. So we've combined your feedback with some of our ideas, and over the next few slides, I just wanted to highlight some of the key features that we will put in place for wildlife. Thank you. So Firstly, the main news is that we're targeting a minimum of a 20% biodiversity net gain through the redevelopment of the former Wisley airfield, and all the calculations that we've been doing so far show that we can achieve this. So this is well above the national target of 10%, which is what the government are putting forward through their environment bill that's going through Parliament at the moment. So we're really proud of this. And the way we can do it is through the over 60 hectares or 150 acres of all the green space that we have to play with in the country park that you've seen, and all the different greenways, green corridors as well. And to be honest, if we just wanted to tick a box for planning, we could probably just make these quite boring, mown grasslands with some paths and a few benches, and that would just be such a huge waste of all that space and that opportunity. So as you've seen, what we're planning instead is a mosaic of different habitats for wildlife, wildflower, grassland, woodland, scrub, wetland features, butterfly banks, all kinds of things. And on top of that, also retaining the majority of the non-agricultural habitats that are there at the moment. So things like the scrub and woodland at the western end of the site, and the amazing veteran oak tree in the slide that some of you might have seen. And one thing I just wanted to show you is I collected some acorns from this tree last year, and I've been growing them in pots. I hope you might just see that. So what I'm hoping to do, if I can keep all my little baby oak trees alive, is to plant them out in the country park one day as like the children of that amazing oak tree. And I just wanted to say as well that we've heard all the concerns that you've all very legitimately raised in previous consultations about, what about disturbance to wildlife that will be using all these spaces, and that's absolutely something that we've thought about in the design. So there's so much space there that we've made sure that there is plenty of cover and large areas of sort of dense vegetation, screened areas that are away from the paths and the areas that are more likely to be busy with footfall, with people and dogs and so on. And these areas will be relatively undisturbed. And to be honest, in our experience from creating other similar SANG country park environments, the huge increase that you get in the total amount of habitat, the quality and quantity, and the foraging resources, the connectivity, all of this more than offsets the effects of disturbance for the majority of species. So another update that I'm super excited about is Taylor Wimpey are partnering with the conservation charity Bug Life, who are all about bugs and insects. And Bug Life have just recently launched a project called Beelines. And what Beelines is about is they've mapped out different hotspots, existing hotspots for pollinating insects all around the country, things like nature reserves. And then they've identified potential links between them, and they've kind of mapped these like a roadmap for bugs and for pollinators. And the purpose of their project is to deliver new areas of habitat for pollinators in these links. So wildflower meadows, hedgerows, anything that flowers, native vegetation. And this acts as a sort of stepping stone between those existing hotspots. And as it happens, the Wisley site is directly inside one of the beelines, which is brilliant. So this is amazing because it means that all of our SANG and country park and all these proposals would deliver the largest beeline to date, the beeline project to date, which is amazing. So we've had a lot of feedback as well about how it's so important to integrate nature into the different villages and the more built environment, and not just have it sort of separate in the country park or in the green bits. And this is just, I completely agree, it's really important on a lot of different levels, because we don't want to create a separation from nature here and everything else there, because this whole disconnection from the natural world is part of the reason why it's in trouble. So hopefully the plans today have kind of really shown you how the green space is interwoven through the whole site. And it's kind of hard to get a sense of scale, I think, when you're looking at it on a screen, but the main green corridors between the villages are really wide, sort of 80, 100 metres, and even the smaller ones that look like really thin strips at this scale, they're 20, 30 metres or so. So there's a lot of space there in these corridors for planting trees and hedgerows and grassland and all this kind of thing. And then additionally, Taylor Wimpey are also partnering with the Hedgehog Street campaign, and this is all about committing to make all of Taylor Wimpey's developments hedgehog friendly, and that of course benefits other wildlife as well. And this is about providing habitat, as I've talked about, and the connectivity, and sort of zooming in on the details, so having little portals in boundary fences and garden fences that are called hedgehog highways, and having dropped curbs on the roads and things like that. And these little details, we will make sure these are secured through a planning document at this outline stage, probably called the Landscape Environmental Management Plan or something similar. And then this will get picked up at the detailed stage, and the community trust that you've heard about earlier from Mark will make sure that features like this are maintained for the whole life of the development. And following on from that, my colleague Becky talked in the previous consultation, if you saw that, about all the different ways in which we can make the built environment wildlife friendly. And this slide gives you a flavour of these, and we've had lots of ideas from you on this as well. So things like different kinds of bird and bat boxes to suit different species, bug hotels, pollinator-friendly landscape planting, log piles, hibernation features, green roofs. So this slide is just kind of an example of where these can go. The arrows don't show exactly where they'll go, because in reality they'll be scattered everywhere. I just didn't want to cover the slide with loads of arrows. But the point is that Taylor Wimpey are committing to all of these things and also still open to more ideas. So let us know. So last one from me, I just wanted to reiterate as well what Mark said earlier, which is that all the green space will be funded and managed for the life of the development by a community trust. And I think from my point of view as an ecologist, what I'd really love to see is that the local community can be invested in that nature that is on their doorstep and want to take care of it. And that would be through volunteering activity, community activities, but also in their own gardens. And we do plan to provide a wildlife gardening starter pack for all new residents with tips on how to make gardens wildlife friendly, including freebies like native wildflower seeds, bird boxes, that kind of thing. And then more widely, we really hope that in time the site would be used for sort of citizen science initiatives like bio blitzes, which is where you kind of go out in the summertime and record everything you can find. And this is such a good way to engage children with nature and get them involved, and it all kind of helps to build this sustainable community we've been talking about today. And I just wanted to finish with an example. So on the slide, bottom left, you've got an image from the airfield of one of the field margins with poppies and things. And one thing that we would include in the design for the country park is kind of experimental plots in different places for what we would call arable plants, things like poppies that you see on field edges. Because we've found through our survey work and our research that the Wisley site did once support some quite interesting arable plants, which haven't been recorded now for several decades in a lot of cases, possibly because of a lack of appropriate management. So what we would like to do is experiment with different management methods to hopefully try and bring some of these species back if they're in the seed bank, or they could recolonise the area and build up their seed bank again. And we've already actually started doing this with the cornflower populations that are in part of the site. So we'll continue that on, and this is the kind of project, an example of something local people might want to get involved with. So that's it from me and from all the presentations today. So thank you for listening. And I'll pass you back over to Antonis now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about ecology as well at the end.
Thank you, Jodie, and to the wider team for presenting this morning on our updated sort of master plan and proposals. If it's okay, we'll just take a short comfort break. I make it 11:17, so maybe for 3 minutes, if that's okay, to come back and maybe have about 40 minutes of questions, if that's okay. So we just take a brief pause now until 11:20. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So as we mentioned, we're now going to go to the Q&A part of the presentation or the consultation, if that's okay. So the first question I have today is from Andrew, and he has asked, is the 6-month delay to the M25 A3 junction upgrade decision due to opposition from the Royal Horticultural Society, with a question mark? If so, do they want changed, and will this delay the TW scheme? So maybe a question for Camille, if that's okay.
Morning, Dennis. Yes, no problem. Yeah, so good question, and our understanding is that the delay is due to the Secretary of State requiring additional time to assess further the environmental impacts. We await the release of the Secretary of State's decision letter, and this should provide us with further explanation to this, but that's our understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. We have another question from Anonymous. Does Taylor Wimpey think building design is in keeping with Ockham? So Graham, probably a question for yourself, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Antonis. Well, first of all, the design of the actual buildings will be subject to future planning applications, assuming that this outline is approved. But we'll be looking to design the buildings in a way that does respond to local building traditions and local material typologies, and will take its cues from the local areas, which includes Ockham, but also a wider range of villages. But having said that, of course, this village will have a quite different character to Ockham. It's much larger. It will be denser because we need to provide a large number of homes that are desperately needed in this area. But at the same time, it will provide a range of services, facilities, and spaces that will be accessible to the wider community, including those residents of Ockham. But to say that the Ockham obviously has a conservation area. The areas closest to Ockham will be treated as sensitively, with limited storey heights, with lower densities, with open space buffers and new planting in order to mitigate any impact. And those lower density areas also around Ockham Lane also do help to mitigate the visibility of the higher density areas, especially with the planting, the significant amount of planting we'll be putting in there.
Thank you, Graham. Hopefully that's answered the question. Thank you. We have a question from Colin. Will the Woking Guildford buses run through the site, and approximately what time will these buses stop running in the evening? So maybe a question for you, Colin, if that's okay.
Sorry, just pushing the buttons to come back online.
That's okay, Colin. It's in regards to the question. Yes. Was, will the Woking Guildford buses run through the site, and approximately what time will these buses stop running in the evening?
Yes, and certainly deal with this. The services will serve the site, so they will call into the site, definitely. I would say it's an augmentation of the existing Surrey County Council services. So we'll be increasing the frequency of those existing services from the existing 1-hour service to a 30-minute service. So that will attract further patronage and obviously be attractive to the residents on the site. The current proposal is to run these services up to about 10:30 in the evening. So they will cover most purposes, including obviously the core employment periods of the day, and also into the evening for some leisure purposes as well.
Thank you, Colin. We have a question from Catherine. How much money is Taylor Wimpey putting into the charitable trust? So, Mark Patchett, this might be a question for you, if that's okay, just to run through the strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. At this stage, we can't provide a precise figure on how much money Taylor will be putting into the trust. However, we can say that it will be significant. There's a business plan, or I'm working on a business plan and financial model right at the moment, which will be designed to ensure viability of the trust in the long term. and the trust will be underpinned in the early years with revenue support from Taylor Wimpey. So the whole point of the financial model is to make sure that right from the very beginning, right through to after Taylor Wimpey have finished and left, that the trust is viable and will remain viable. And so Taylor Wimpey will be underpinning that with support from the early stages. So they will be contributing, and the trust will be viable right throughout.
Thank you, Mark. And I know we received a similar question on Wednesday. And as I also mentioned, I think that's what was so key to get you on board very early on, to ensure as the master plan evolved, we do think about sort of all of the areas and how the site will run, function and be maintained. So thank you, Mark. Have a question from Rona, who said, I read in the Times in May that the UK Statistics Watchdog confirmed official projections for the future population growth in Guildford were overstated. Might it be possible that Guildford may not in fact need any development on the Wisley site, as there are enough brownfield sites closer to other residential areas with existing infrastructure? Camille or Lee, this may be a question for either of you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I can start, and Lee, please do chip in if you need.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, no. I mean, I can't comment on the contents of that news article. But what I can say is we're an adopted site within an allocated site within an adopted local plan, and we are providing much needed housing for Guildford Borough, and that's the context that we're working in and that we continue to work in. Lee, anything to add on?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a national shortage of houses. We know that. Guildford has to take its fair share, and this site has been identified in their local policy, A35, as a need for houses. You know, the other thing to mention here is 40% of our site is affordable housing too. So this is going to be a punch in the arm and a much needed injection for affordability within the area.
Thank you, team. Right, we have a question from Andrew, who has asked, please explain more about the cohesive master plan with the other landowners. Does Taylor Wimpey have any more land under option in the area? So Graham, I don't know if you wanted to quickly run through sort of all the workshops and things we've had with the landowners, and then maybe Camille or Lee, sorry, not Mike Davis, might want to comment on sort of where we are with the landowners. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Yes, I'll start. Obviously, we don't want to be designing our village in isolation. This is part of a wider allocation, and we want to understand how, and so does Guildford want to understand how this all works together. So we are working very closely with the other landowners to design a comprehensive master plan that includes the whole site, and we meet very regularly with them and with Guildford Borough Council to sort of come up with a master plan, which is land ownership blind. I guess so. It's the right master plan for the whole site, not just doing what Taylor Wimpey want or what the other landowners want. The thing that is right for the master plan and for the locality.
Yeah, I think the whole site allocation has to work in a cohesive manner, as Graham just mentioned. And no, we have not got any options on the adjacent land. So we have to unfortunately row our own boat with our own land ownership on our outline application, but we are positively engaging with the adjacent landowners agents on a regular basis with Guildford Borough Council to make sure this is developed as a whole cohesive master plan.
And I think it's also fair to say that the representations of the other landowners also have the same opinion and same mind as us. So we're all coming from the same position that the right thing to do is to master plan this as a full allocation and work together to make sure it works for the area and for all of us and for GBC. So it is a really strong relationship that we have.
I think it's just to finally add as well, the other landowner representatives are also part of our design review panel discussions as well. So it's a very open, transparent process. So yes, very much we need to master plan the whole on a ownership blind basis to really get the full, to maximise on the full opportunity here at the Fulham Wisley Airfield. We've had a question in regards to the fossil fuel free building. So as the homes will be fossil fuel free, which is something we are very proud of, does that mean no gas connections or chimneys for open fires? So Lee is the Strategic Technical Director. No doubt you'll want to answer this question. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, an easy answer to this one. We won't be having any chimneys and we won't be having any gas. But I'll go into a little bit more detail. We're very proud to point out that this development will be powered by 100% renewable electricity. The heating, hot water will come from a renewable source in terms of air source heat pumps. This will be located near the A3 on a separate parcel of land, so it doesn't interfere with the homes themselves. So the idea is that this will be one of the most green and sustainable developments in Surrey, if not the UK. So I'm very proud of that fact.
Absolutely, Lee. Thank you. A question which we do get asked quite a lot separately on emails and things, so maybe one for you, Camille, is in regards to, will you offer a doctor's surgery? So probably worthwhile just answering that for the benefit of everyone on the call today, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. We also had this question on Wednesday, and as you say, and Donis, we do get asked this a lot, and it's something that we're obviously very happy to speak about. So we would really like, from a Taylor Wimpey perspective, first thing to say is we would really like a doctor's surgery, a healthcare hub on site. We've been in liaison with the CCG, the clinical commissioning group, who are the decision makers, about if further medical facilities are on new developments, or whether they prefer Section 106 money to better existing facilities. We've also been speaking with the local GP surgeries, and we've had a meeting with the CCG and Guildford Borough Council and a local GP practice, just to really explain as a collective to the CCG why we think there's a massive benefit to having something on site. At the moment, we're waiting to hear feedback from the CCG on whether they think an on-site facility would be best placed, or whether Section 106 money to better existing facilities would be preferred. So that's where we are, but we hope to have a conclusion or feedback on that before we submit the planning application.
I think it's also worth to mention, and hopefully you would have seen on the video or the fly through that we showed, which will be on our website, I might add. Apologies if that was a bit jumpy, but we as Taylor Wimpey, we have master plan for health provision within our master plan, and that is centred around the community quarter, which is right in the heart of the community. So as Camille said, we will be monitoring those discussions with interest. So thank you, Camille. We've had a question from Rona. What is your response to the Horsley's Parish Council? What is your response to Horsley Parish Council regarding to your cycle routes, saying it was underwhelming, especially the lack of cycle track from Wisley to Effingham Junction, where they do not consider this proposal route to be a viable and safe option for cyclists? I will also add, Colin, that might be a question for you, but just before, just to bring everyone up to speed, we have been engaging with firstly the community liaison group, and then secondly with non-technical and technical stakeholders on our off-site cycling provisions and proposals. We are waiting for written feedback, which is due next week, and just further to add to your comment, Rona, we will be sending out a response to all of the questions that everyone has kindly provided throughout that separate engagement piece. So Colin, that was, hopefully you remember the question. If not, I can read it out again, but it was, what is your response to the Horsley Parish Council responding to your cycling route, saying it's underwhelming, especially the lack of cycle track from Wisley to Effingham Junction, where they do not consider this proposal route a viable and safe option for cyclists?
Thank you, Antonis, and thank you, Rona, for the question. I mean, we've been really pleased with feedback we've had from all the local stakeholders. So we've spoken to the groups that Antonis mentioned. We've engaged with the local authorities and with the parish councils and with the cycle user groups as well. So these have all been really valuable insights into what happens at the moment, and also what people actually want. So we will be taking those into account. As explained in the presentation, the cycle routes have been based on a number of satisfying the maximum number of journey purposes. So we want to make sure that we get cyclists to the destinations where they can undertake the most activities, basically, and that will encourage the maximum number of people to use them. So we're looking at providing routes for the average cyclist, and so that obviously requires some work. So we need to focus our resources. So at the moment, we've gone through the exercise of targeting what we think will be the best places to get to. So specifically, we are focusing our resources on a route to East Horsley, because as you saw in the table, it has a number of other attractions other than the railway station. In terms of Effingham Junction, obviously it has a railway station, but the Horsley station in East Horsley is on exactly the same line. So we're focusing on getting people to East Horsley on that route that we showed you. But Effingham Junction will, of course, still be available to cyclists. We're aiming to reduce the speed limit on Old Lane to increase the safety for all road users there. And Effingham Junction will, of course, be served by a 15-minute peak frequency bus down to that station from the site. Because basically the cycling is just one strand of our sustainable transport proposals, and the bus is a very important additional element to that, and in some instances will actually be the more popular element. So we are covering all the bases. We need to focus our resources, and that's why we've chosen to do things the way we have. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Colin. We've had a question from Catherine. Have the homes been designed to reduce light pollution for local endangered wildlife? So, Jodie, I know this is something in particular you have been looking at.
Okay. Yeah, there's kind of two strands really to the light pollution issue. As you say, there's the actual design of the homes, and that is something that will come forward at the detailed stage. It's not something that's a matter for the outline stage, but needless to say, technology is constantly evolving in this area, and when we get to that detailed design stage, we will make sure that we're up to date on that and take all in line with all the appropriate regulations and so on. More of a sort of the more pressing when it comes to light pollution, because with homes, you know, it's research doesn't focus on that as much because people tend to close curtains and blinds and things. It's more the external street lighting and security lighting and that kind of thing, which might be what you meant. And that's something that we're talking to at the moment with our lighting consultants. So again, the detail will come forward at the detailed stage, but we're establishing the principles at the moment, and this is based on research from the Back Conservation Trust and the Institute for Lighting Professionals, because there's been a lot of research done into this, and it sort of a lot of it has been on bats because they're known to be quite sensitive to light pollution, but it kind of by extension covers other nocturnal wildlife like badgers, hedgehogs, that kind of thing. So general principles that we'd definitely be adhering to include directing the lighting away from the boundary features, so sort of downwards, inwards, and then also the same principle for any new features like bat boxes and things. If we're putting new bat boxes up on trees and houses, then they will not be illuminated. It's about the different types of lights as well that you select. So you select lights that emit light at wavelengths that are away from the UV, the white blue end of the spectrum, because that's the more disturbing wavelengths. We would use as well things like in sensitive areas, instead of having tall kind of street lights, have where possible like lower level LED lights, bollards, that kind of thing, to keep everything low to the ground. And you can use hoods, shields to help also minimise the light spill that goes upwards and outwards. So there's like lots of new kind of clever designs coming through all the time. It's kind of constantly evolving and updating. So That's why we set the main principles at this stage. And then when in a few years' time, when we look at the detail, we'll then look at what the modern technology is at that point. But that is definitely something that we'll be keeping track of and working on as ecologists throughout. That's our job. So I can reassure you we'll be looking into that in more detail at a later stage and setting out the principles now.
Thanks, Jodie. And as I said, I know this is something you've been looking at with interest, so thank you for providing that answer. Thank you. We've had a question from an anonymous person on the call. You mentioned a modal shift away from cars. How many car spaces, including driveways and garages, will you be providing per dwelling? This may be a question, if it's car related, probably to Colin or maybe even Graham, if that's okay.
Hello there. Yeah, I can start with the answer to that question, and then it may be that Graham feels he can add something to that from a master planning perspective. I mean, basically, we will be providing parking. That goes without saying. We're not banishing the car, but at the moment we're basically providing the number of spaces that will be required by parking standards that are set out in policy. Now there are various ways that we deal with that, and there are different balances between allocated parking and unallocated parking that affect the number of spaces that you provide ultimately. And this will come forward when we look at each village in more detail. Of course, as we look at each reserve matters application, as it were, in more detail, it's not unreasonable to expect that some of these parking policies may have moved on or been superseded as trends change. And so it may be that the parking standards in some of the later applications are slightly different because we have to meet a different standard. But we'll have to wait and see how that all evolves. The important thing is that we are still prioritising the other modes of transport over the private car. And as I explained in the presentation, we're looking to make it much easier for people to choose not to use their car by providing comprehensive cycle routes, providing a very walkable neighbourhood, providing mobility hubs so that people could do their day-to-day business in the village centre rather than travelling out of the village. A variety of means that I think we've had on the call this morning. So I will stop there because I can see that Lee and Graham probably do want to chime into that one.
I'll just kind of add to that. I mean, our philosophy on this site, whilst you can't banish the car, that's not going to be possible. We all know that. The world's changing. So the idea to make our modes of transport more sustainable by making it easier to use, for instance, cycles, to get on public transport, to walk somewhere. I've seen some comments on the chat about bad weather. I get that. But if you make these opportunities easier for people, and if it is raining, you can get to a bus stop that goes directly to where you want on a regular basis. It's easier than getting into your car, and cheaper as well, which is the other important factor. And it gives you, let's be honest, the health benefits of it too. The other thing I want to mention as well is that all the houses and homes will be provided with electronic charging facilities for EV vehicles in the future. And we know recent publications from Ford and all the other major car manufacturers, the world is going this way. So we're providing a flexible future for the whole site in every single shape of transport that we can think of. But this site's going to last for about 10 years in terms of build. We don't know what rules and legislation are coming, but the idea is that the site can cater for it when it does arrive.
And I'll just add as well, Lee, one thing we are very proud of that we've been able to produce in the master plan, and credit, I think, to the design team, is within the Taylor Wimpey allocation, obviously that's our red line, there will be a bus stop within 200 metres, so only 2-3 minute walk from each home to get access, obviously, to these buses. So, Graham, was there anything else you wanted to finish on with this question?
I think between the three of you, you've covered most things.
Sorry if I stole your thunder, Graham.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Lee. We've had a question, well, actually, probably one for me. Please confirm that you publish all question and answers and not just the easy ones you want to select. So sorry if that's how it's coming across. We try to offer a variety of questions and topics, as we appreciate some members are more particularly interested in other facets than others. But absolutely, as I mentioned, the 4th of June, we will be publishing all question and answers onto our website, similarly to what we did in chapter 1 and 2 of engagement onto our website. Again, for avoidance of doubt, that's www.wisley-airfield.com. Question from David then. With the high price of houses in this area, what will the average price of houses be, including affordable? So probably Camille and maybe John, actually. We've got John from Vivid on the call as well. So Camille, did you just want to maybe start off, if that's okay, in regards to that question?
Sure, no problem. So we, as we said in our presentation, 40% of the homes will be delivered as affordable housing. Of that 40%, 70% will be delivered as affordable rent in line with Guildford Borough Council's adopted policy. Affordable rent means 80% of local market rent or the local housing allowance, whichever is the lower. And then the other 30% that we will be delivering will be agreed with Guildford Borough Council through the process of the planning application. And this could be as shared ownership, and the price of shared ownership is dependent on market value at the same time as the market homes. So I hope that sort of clears that up. But yeah, Lee or...
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit more to that. Not only, obviously, we're providing these homes, but the homes, we're very proud of the fact that these are going to be designed to what is technically called an M42 standard. Now, that's basically accessible homes for all. The standard is generally M41. I know this is a bit techie, but it's important fact to say that the houses will be designed in a way with space, light and accessibility for, dare I say, ambient disabled as well as the standard more mobile person.
Thank you, Camille and Lee. John, was there anything you wanted to add to either Camille or Lee's?
I think they covered it very well. Yeah. We're just we're very excited to be part of the project and fully committed to providing the affordable housing in accordance with the policy. So no, it's great to be involved. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Probably another question on affordability, but from a different aspect, actually, for Mark Patchett. This question actually is, how worrying all this green space is to be funded by the community trust, which will no doubt break down over time. Are you not concerned that this management depends on people paying their service charge? So Mark, I know this is something, again, we have been looking at in detail. So maybe a quick one for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Well, it certainly shouldn't be worrying because this is certainly a tried and tested model. And I have to say is actually more robust than certainly the traditional management company arrangements that many of the house builders are using on many sites. And there have been stories and issues of some of those management companies failing. So this is a very robust model, as I tried and tested. And I've certainly been using this approach, which is the charitable trust model with multi-stakeholder boards, people that are working for public benefit. So they have a range of interests that they're bringing to the experience of running this as a social business, but clearly say with public and charitable benefit. And I've been doing that for over 12 years now, set up a number of these, and we can certainly provide examples of those if people are interested in looking experience elsewhere. And you say that the income streams come from a range of sources, so it's not just from the residents. Clearly, resident contributions are important, but they come from a range of other sources, including user charges, for example, for the community centre, the facilities, sports facilities, and so on, and also from some endowed assets as well, which contribute to contribute overall. And certainly, so there's good track record and good experience, and this will be set up in a way to make sure that it is successful and viable in perpetuity. So the person asking the question doesn't need to be worried. This is a very robust, say, tried and tested model.
Thanks, Mark. And again, while we've asked you to be part of the team very early doors, so thank you. A question maybe for Rob Miller, or maybe even Lee actually. Have you calculated how many emissions you will be making in both moving the soil and the actual build itself? Again, something very proud to say that we have. So probably over to Rob or Lee, if that's okay.
So yeah, I'll probably start, and Lee, please dive in. I guess the general statement is yes, and we've undertaken embodied carbon modelling, which calculates the emissions associated with moving and extracting raw materials, transport materials to site, and construction practices. So looking at the whole life carbon associated with the development, and the design and procurement strategy will aim to reduce this impact through practices such as sort of looking at recycled content in materials and prioritising local sourcing wherever possible. There's quite a lot of industry guidance available now as to best practice benchmarks for that level of performance. So that's where we're targeting that, and that will continue to be reviewed as the design develops for each of the phases.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to Rob's absolutely right. It's a very good question. There's one big thing we can't steer away from. There's a big lump of concrete on this particular airfield. It's a runway, but I'm pleased to say that we'll be reusing it all for our roads and our construction purposes. So no off-site transport will be required, which is unusual for a site of this size. And again, that's how we've looked very carefully at the design, the levels, how the SUDs work, reusing materials where we can. And I'm pleased to announce that it equalises and balances. So that's a very, very positive message, and a sustainable message to how we build our sites.
Yeah, absolutely, Lee. I think that cut and fill exercise that we've done is something we are particularly very proud of here. So really, again, that sustainability strategy is embedded in everything that we've been looking at. So thank you, Rob. Thank you, Lee. Question from an anonymous source. How do you expect local residents on Old Lane to get any sleep now with buses running until midnight? Traffic in this area drops off currently at about 7 p.m. Colin, this might be a question for you, if that's okay, in regards to buses.
Thanks, Antonis, and thanks to the anonymous attendee for that question. I think it's a very short question, I'm afraid, a very short answer to this question. We're proposing electric buses for the service to Effingham Junction and Horsley. Obviously, these have much lower noise levels than a normal rickety old diesel bus. So these will be new electric buses that will be sourced specifically for this service. So they will be virtually imperceptible in operation. So that's a very brief answer.
Thank you, Colin. We have a question maybe for Graham, if that's okay, in regards to why have the properties got no private outside space? Do you think this is wise planning in COVID-19 and potential for an increase in global pandemics? So Graham, probably it might actually be prudent in the first instance to just emphasise what we will be submitting for our upcoming planning, which is obviously the parameter plans, and then obviously explaining about maybe the individual dwellings in subsequent applications.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can pick up on the individual dwellings in terms of amenity space. I mean, every dwelling on this particular development will be provided with its own private amenity space. We understand, obviously, with the current pandemic that's been, obviously, we've all gone through over the last year and a bit, private amenity space is very important to us all. And therefore I can say that this with confidence. But not only are we having private amenity spaces, we're having community spaces that obviously can get people to engage, doorstop talks, and actually create something as a community on site. And we all very, very eager to get out and about and do this now, having been holed up in our homes for the last year.
Thanks. I mean, I think that's the main point of this question. Yes, at the moment we're only providing for an outline planning application, which doesn't necessarily show the details of private gardens, etc. But as Lee said, all homes will have an element of open space, but within the outline, we are applying for over 70 hectares of public open space in addition to that private space. So the amount of open space available to people on this site will be pretty unprecedented, I think.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Lee. Just had a quick comment, really, more than anything, just to from one of the members, if that's okay, on the consultation, just for us to point out on the master plan where the proposed Gypsum Traveller pitches are. So just very quickly before we go to our next question, the proposal, which again was following the feedback from the community consultation, the very first one that we had in July, we presented options for where the Gypsum Traveller community could be located. And for us as Taylor Wimpey, it's very important we deliver an inclusive community. And where it was agreed, and we have had discussions with the Gypsum Traveller officer at Guildford Borough Council, was for the Gypsum Traveller pitches to go next to, or as part of our western neighbourhood, just next to the entranceway for the site. So that's currently where we're proposing the Gypsum Traveller community within the Wolseley airfield. Okay, if I go maybe to the next and probably final question, if that's okay. Maybe one for Rob. What level of noise is emitted for the heat centre, which again is something we're very proud of in regards to the energy strategy? In fact, I'll keep the map up, Rob, because I might be able to point out where we've
yeah, that's a good idea. I've jumped in here, AP. Apologies, Rob. In terms of the technology we're proposing, air source heat pumps, will be located to the west of the development, right adjacent to the A3. So they're not next to homes, first of all. The other thing to point out is that air source heat pumps are actually lower in noise production than what I would term as a standard gas boiler. So not only are we locating it away, we're actually improving the noise within the house too, because there will not be any gas boilers within these houses. So not only the external will be quieter, but also inside the house will be quieter.
Thanks, Lee. Rob, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No. I mean, it's been specifically located there to minimise disturbance to existing and future homes. So that's the reason it's there, and the topography of the site will assist with that, with the acoustic modelling and mitigating that impact. So there shouldn't be any impact on any homes.
Thank you, Rob. Well, thank you to all of the panel attendees and obviously to all of the viewers today. Just to finish off of the consultation event today, we just wanted to run through sort of our next steps. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation today, we have our final design review panel next week, so Friday the 28th of May, where we obviously will be showing our latest plans. As I mentioned, and as requested by one of our attendees today, a full Q&A document will be uploaded onto our website on the 4th of June. So any unanswered questions, I know there was a lot today as there were on Wednesday, so for sure we will answer all of those questions and post that onto our website, which again is www.wisley.airfield.com. We are planning on submitting our planning application for the former Wisley Airfield. So again, thank you to Graham and obviously Camille just mentioning about the parameter plans, which you saw previously. So they were those 4 plans predominantly. Those will be submitted along other planning information around the 2nd or 3rd quarter of this year. So thank you again for attending today. A feedback form will be sent around on Monday, as well as these recordings, both the ones from Wednesday and today will be uploaded onto our website. Please do sign up to our newsletters. Obviously there's regular updates on there, and of course any site-wide matters that you may find interesting are also uploaded onto those newsletters. But on behalf of myself and the wider team, thank you for participating today and for all your feedback. And we very much look forward to speaking to you all very soon, hopefully.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.